Things got messy before anyone called them lies. 2 tabs, 3 messages, one old tablet sat between the careful one and me. Of course I said Jonas was paranoid because that word had always ended arguments quickly. My husband stopped arguing before I understood what silence meant. He was not guessing anymore. He was waiting for me to finish lying. Things got messy on Tuesday before anyone had the language to call them lies. 2 tabs, 3 messages, one old tablet waited at home with the careful one. Of course I said work was heavy, because heavy work explained distance neatly. My name was Freya Lindholm, 42, Senior Product Operations Manager at Vera Systems. I built dashboards for broken launches and made bad timelines look controlled enough. The wellness room smelled of eucalyptus cleaner and overheated laptop plastic after review. Raphael sat across the co-working pod, beside the aquarium wall, watching me quietly. He said indirectly that calm women were usually carrying entire rooms alone silently. That sounded harmless then, which is how certain doors learn to open inward. Jonas had made cinnamon toast after midnight during my worst product launches before. My husband used to leave plates beside my keyboard without asking difficult questions. Once he let me read letters he wrote to his dead mother privately. He trusted me with grief, because grief had already made him careful forever. Back then, careful sounded tender, not suspicious, not tired, not forensic yet to me. The old white family tablet usually played recipes while we cooked together there. That evening it sat charging near the hallway bowl, blank and ordinary again. Jonas asked softly whether March had taken something from us permanently somehow inside. He meant the keynote rehearsal he missed for Annika's medical appointment that month. I heard another request to manage his guilt while swallowing my own absence. Things got messy there too, though nothing loud had happened between us yet. The careful one waited for an answer, holding his tea with both hands. I said stress made him read shadows into normal work exhaustion again lately. Of course the sentence sounded reasonable because reasonable sentences hide sharper edges well. He nodded once, but his eyes stayed on my phone too long that night. 2 breaths, 1 notification, and my screen went dark against my palm between us. Raphael had sent a message about drinks near the Riverside Hotel lobby later. I turned the phone face down before Jonas could ask anything specific about it. That movement should have been small, but rooms remember small movements very well. Jonas said indirectly that I seemed somewhere else even while sitting beside him. I said he was tired, and that grief sometimes made patterns appear again. Things got messy because I already knew which word would stop him there. Paranoid was still waiting in my mouth, clean, cruel, and useful enough then. Thursday began inside the product launch war room, where everyone smelled tired already. 2 monitors, 3 dashboards, and 1 private chat sat open beside my coffee. Things got messy because product crises make secrecy feel almost professional at first. Raphael sent a message while engineers argued about broken notifications across regions again. He said indirectly that I looked calm because I deserved better rooms elsewhere. Of course I read better as wanted, not as flattery with clean shoes. The careful one called during lunch, and I let it become voicemail again. Jonas left no complaint, only a soft message about dinner and rain outside. That softness irritated me because suspicion would have given me something solid back. I told myself privacy was allowed, even inside a marriage built carefully together. Raphael waited near the glass wall after the incident review ended early upstairs. He asked whether Riverside drinks would ruin my evening or rescue it tonight. I said neither, then smiled like the answer had not already chosen him. Things got messy when I opened my calendar and removed the coffee plan. 1 click, 1 blank square, and 1 cleaner timeline appeared before me immediately. I called it editing because editing sounded adult, practical, and almost harmless then. The company chat kept flashing so nobody saw my hand shake slightly underneath. Maya texted that forensic husbands made normal women feel like defendants too quickly. Of course I sent a laughing face, because agreement needed soft packaging then. She asked whether Raphael still made me feel visible without interrogating me first. I answered with a thumb, which said more than language could safely admit. At 6, the war room emptied into elevators and weak fluorescent silence downstairs. Raphael stood downstairs in the lobby, coat open, phone already away very neatly. He looked available, which felt different from Jonas looking patiently present beside me. The Riverside Hotel smelled of rain, brass polish, and expensive flowers everywhere upstairs. 2 glasses, 1 corner table, and 1 deleted calendar event followed me inside. Raphael said indirectly that nobody should have to justify needing warmth from anyone. I heard absolution, not seduction, because absolution suited my story better then, completely. His knee touched mine under the table, light enough to deny afterward easily. Things got messy because denial depends on small contacts remaining technically small forever. I checked my phone twice and saw Jonas had sent nothing new yet. That should have comforted me, but silence looked like evidence waiting later upstairs. Raphael asked whether my husband always treated emotions like maintenance requests at home. I said Jonas loved a checklist more than a breathing woman sometimes lately. It was cruel because it sounded clever, and cleverness passes as truth socially. Raphael laughed softly, and the laugh placed me on someone else's side immediately. At home, the old white tablet sat bright beside the hallway bowl charging. The screen showed a cloud notification with a hotel lobby thumbnail preview waiting. Jonas stood near it, barefoot, wearing the sweater from last winter again, quietly. He asked, indirectly, why I was photographed downtown after saying work ran late. His voice was careful, which made the careful one look guilty somehow tonight. I heard accusation because accusation let me answer with injury instead of explanation. I said a product partner had needed advice after the review downstairs afterward. That was not impossible, which made the lie feel almost cooperative to me. Jonas asked why the calendar showed nothing after 6:30 that evening either. 2 questions, 1 thumbnail, and 1 missing square pressed against my ribs hard. Things got messy because his facts were accurate, and accuracy felt invasive then. I said he was building patterns because grief had trained him badly again. His face changed then, not dramatically, only like a light lowering behind glass. He said, indirectly, that asking about 1 photo was not illness at all. I heard him defending surveillance because that version kept me safer for now. Of course I said paranoid softly, like I was worried, not attacking him. The word worked because he had once begged me not to use it. He looked toward the tablet, then away, as if measuring something private inside. I told myself his silence meant shame, not that I had struck correctly. Later, Maya called from her salon waiting area, music playing behind her loudly. She said men who track details are halfway to control already anyway, eventually. I repeated that line until it sounded like my own thought inside completely. Things got messy when I told her Jonas had checked the tablet downstairs. She said family tablets were shared property, but suspicion made anything ugly quickly. That answer was less warm than usual, so I changed the subject fast. By then, the story I told outsiders had become easier than marriage itself. Jonas's real question had been small, but my answer kept expanding around it. The careful one was not searching wildly, only comparing what I supplied calmly. That should have mattered, but fairness was useless to my defense then anyway. Raphael kept texting softer sentences, and softer sentences made consequences seem delayed longer. Theo came by Saturday morning to return Jonas's borrowed archive scanner from work. He found Jonas in the hallway, holding a notebook instead of coffee there. Theo asked indirectly whether something serious had happened between us recently at home. Jonas mentioned 1 thumbnail, 1 calendar gap, and my reaction afterward quietly once. I watched Theo hear enough to understand, then choose the floor instead carefully. His silence protected everyone poorly, which made it useful for me temporarily anyway. I told Theo Jonas was exhausted and reading tech glitches like omens again. Theo nodded, not convinced, but afraid of becoming necessary that day there himself. By afternoon, Jonas stopped asking questions and started writing exact times down carefully. That looked dramatic until I understood later how careful despair becomes organized quietly. He wrote hotel lobby, calendar deletion, voicemail, and my use of paranoid down. I saw the notebook once and laughed because fear needed a costume today. Of course I called the notebook proof that he was spiraling again badly. Raphael messaged that evening, asking whether the careful one had calmed down yet. I hated that Jonas had become a phrase inside someone else's phone now. Still, I answered that everything was fine and manageable for now anyway tonight. Things got messy because manageable was the first word that frightened me properly. At midnight, the tablet lit again with another backup notification from downtown nearby. Jonas reached it before me, but this time he did not ask anything. He simply turned the screen face down and carried it into his study alone. Saturday arrived with wet soil smell and June's garden lights trembling above glasses. 2 candles, 3 plates, and 1 old tablet sat waiting beside the speaker quietly. Things got messy because dinner parties make lies wear better shoes than kitchens. June had invited us before anything had a name anyone could say aloud. Of course I came, because absence would have looked more guilty than presence. Jonas arrived first, carrying wine, wearing navy, standing beside Annika, near Rosemary. The careful one looked rested, which annoyed me more than anger tonight. Raphael was not invited, but his name had learned the room already. Maya kissed my cheek and asked whether everything was manageable with Jonas tonight. I said manageable meant married, and marriage always needed maintenance after storms anyway. She laughed once, then looked at Jonas and stopped laughing too quickly. June played soft jazz through the old white tablet near the basil pots. That tablet had played recipes once back when our kitchen still trusted me. Now it balanced beside olives, speakers, and a phone charging cable together. Theo asked Jonas about archive work, trying to build a neutral wall. Jonas answered politely, but his eyes kept returning to the tablet's screen. I hated that return because it made every ordinary object feel recruited. Things got messy when Raphael's preview appeared while June adjusted the music. 1 line, 2 seconds, and the name Raphael glowed beside dinner plates. Jonas saw it before I reached the table, because careful people watch edges. He asked, indirectly, whether I could step aside with him for clarity. I heard clarity as prosecution because my fear needed him positioned badly. So I smiled at the table and asked why he was whispering. Annika looked up first, then June, then Maya with sudden caution. Of course I made my voice gentle, because gentleness can carry sharper knives. I said Jonas was doing the paranoid thing again over a notification. The word landed between the salad bowl and his hand on the chair. Nobody spoke, which made the garden insects sound almost organized around us. Jonas did not raise his voice, and that should have warned me. He asked, indirectly, whether I wanted to use that word publicly again. I heard threat inside publicly, not the pain I had placed there. Things got messy because witnesses make cruelty look like confidence for 3 seconds. Maya gave one little laugh, loyal, nervous, and badly timed beside me. Then Annika looked at her, and the laugh died without rescue. Theo stared at his fork, as if metal required deep study tonight. June moved toward the tablet, slow enough to seem like hosting. I told them Jonas had been collecting shadows since grief made him anxious. That was the sentence I should never have let leave my mouth. Of course I called it concern because concern survives rooms better than contempt. Jonas looked at Annika then, not for rescue, only for balance. His sister stood beside him without touching, which somehow made me smaller. Raphael sent another message, and the screen brightened again against June's napkin. June's hand paused above it, then covered the screen too carefully. I saw the pause and understood she had understood more than enough. Things got messy because understanding moved around the table without asking permission. Jonas said, indirectly, that one preview was not the whole question tonight. I said there was always another question when paranoia needed feeding badly. The careful one closed his mouth, and something private closed with it. He picked up the tablet, not dramatically, only with both hands steady. That old object looked suddenly heavier than any glass or plate there. I wanted him to look ridiculous, holding evidence during grilled fish. Instead, he looked like a man finally choosing not to beg. Of course, I told myself that was performance, because truth had become dangerous. Maya touched my elbow, but her fingers did not hold very long. She whispered indirectly that maybe we should let this pass until later. I heard betrayal immediately because enablers are supposed to stay warm. June asked whether anyone wanted more bread, which was not about bread. Theo said yes too quickly, and Annika did not answer her. Things got messy when I kept talking after the room had finished. I said marriage with Jonas had become a daily audit of feelings. That was partly true, which made it useful and ugly together. Jonas looked at me then, and the quiet became almost physical. He said, indirectly, that I had taught him questions were sickness. I said he was proving my point by making dinner into evidence. Of course, nobody corrected me because polite rooms dislike becoming courtrooms quickly. June's phone lay face down beside her plate, but I had seen movement. She had saved something. Maybe nothing. Maybe exactly what mattered later. The careful one slipped the tablet under his arm and stood up. He thanked June for dinner, which made her kindness look wounded afterward. Annika rose immediately, carrying his coat before he asked for anything. Theo stood halfway, then sat again like courage had failed quietly. Maya stayed beside me, but her shoulder had turned toward the gate. Things got messy because exits reveal loyalties faster than speeches ever can. Jonas did not ask me to follow him through June's garden path. That absence of invitation insulted me more deeply than anger would have. I said he was leaving because he enjoyed being misunderstood tonight publicly. He stopped near the wet stone steps but did not turn. Jonas said indirectly that misunderstanding required less proof than he already had. The sentence struck the table softly, and everyone pretended not to hear. Of course I laughed, because laughter was the only tool still moving. It sounded thin, and even Maya looked down at her glass. Raphael's name stayed hidden beneath the tablet cover under Jonas's arm. The garden smelled of lemon, smoke, and something burning too long downstairs. June walked him out, not me, which I noticed and denied. When she returned, her face had lost the hostess smile completely. She said, indirectly, that people deserved privacy without being humiliated over illness. I answered that illness was her word, not mine, because precision mattered. Things got messy because precision had never saved anyone from being cruel. Maya asked whether I wanted to leave but did not offer company. I told her I was fine, which sounded like a product update. The careful one had taken the tablet, the preview, and everyone's silence. I stayed at the table with my story still dressed for dinner. Monday night, the house smelled of cold tea and rain trapped inside coats. 2 lamps, 1 locked study door, and Jonas moving quietly behind it waited. Things got messy because silence had started sounding more organized than anger lately. Of course I told myself organization was another symptom of his suspicion growing. The careful one had not mentioned June's garden dinner since we left together. He had not asked about Raphael's name, which made everything worse that night. Questions had been easier, because questions let me perform concern and injury convincingly. Silence gave me nothing to bend, nothing to name as paranoia afterward anymore. I found the old white tablet missing from its hallway charging place again. The charger was gone too, coiled absent beside the empty ceramic bowl tonight. Jonas kept his study door half open, which felt designed for discovery somehow. I walked in carrying folded towels, because towels made intrusion look domestic enough. His desk smelled of paper dust, black coffee, and polished wood that evening. The tablet lay beside his old therapy notebook, both placed squarely together there. Things got messy when I saw the notebook open under lamplight there waiting. One underlined sentence sat alone, asking for proof before accepting shame from anyone. I had read that notebook years earlier, when grief still frightened him badly. Back then, he had trusted me with pages nobody else saw from him. His mother had died slowly, and grief had made him question everything afterward. He feared becoming difficult, suspicious, heavy, and impossible to love after that year. I had promised that asking for reassurance would never make him unstable again. Of course, promises sound noble until they stand between you and escape later. For one clean second, the room gave me the truth plainly enough there. He was not spiraling, not performing, not collecting shadows for punishment that night. He was refusing to accept shame just because I offered it first again. That truth opened too much space inside me, so I closed it quickly. I told myself Jonas had staged the notebook to make me feel cruel. Things got messy because cruelty was easier to accuse than recognize inward alone. I set the towels down and reached for my phone immediately afterward anyway. Raphael's thread still sat there, careful hearts beside careful disappearing plans upstairs waiting. 2 messages, 3 receipts, and 1 weekend hotel suggestion glowed blue there together. I deleted the thread while the notebook watched from the desk silently nearby. Of course, deletion felt like cleaning, because cleaning is control with fragrance attached. Jonas appeared in the doorway before the screen went fully dark in hand. He asked indirectly whether I had found what I needed in there tonight. I heard accusation, because accusation gave me a surface to push against immediately. I said I was checking whether he had started documenting my movements again. He said indirectly that documentation began after ordinary questions were punished at home. The careful one sounded tired, not righteous, and tiredness unsettled me more deeply. I told him his therapy tools were becoming weapons against our marriage now. Things got messy because I made concern sound softer than contempt again tonight. He said this was never one photo, one preview, or one dinner only. He said indirectly that it was months of truth being called illness repeatedly. I heard him turning himself into a victim with careful professional timing again. So I said his grief had taught him to mistrust ordinary distance completely. His face changed at grief, not loudly, only around the mouth first there. That small hurt should have stopped me, but momentum kept speaking anyway loudly. Annika arrived before I could build another sentence around his weakness again tonight. She stood outside the study, rain on her coat, eyes already narrow there. Her presence made family enter the room without asking permission from me first. Things got messy because sisters remember wounds wives think they own forever privately. Annika told me indirectly that grief was not a muzzle for truth anymore. I heard loyalty, not accuracy, because accuracy had become dangerous tonight inside me. Jonas looked down at the tablet, not at either of us then, again. That was his vulnerability, plain and sad, without strategy or performance at all. He said indirectly that he wanted one evening where I answered cleanly once. I heard another demand for confession, so I made it about control again. Of course I said he wanted clean answers because messy feelings scared him. Annika stepped closer and told me indirectly that I was changing subjects again. I said she knew nothing about living inside a marriage under inspection daily. The word inspection pleased me because it made my betrayals sound procedural enough. Jonas opened the tablet with his passcode, which I pretended not to notice. Photo thumbnails sat in rows, hotel glass, and lobby flowers repeating quietly there. Things got messy because evidence looks smaller before someone explains its order aloud. He did not explain yet, and that restraint frightened me more than anger. I said he was proving my point by arranging pain like archives again. Jonas closed the cover and placed the tablet beside the notebook carefully there. Then he took the charger and wrapped it around both objects carefully together. One tablet, one notebook, one charger, and no argument left for me anymore. Maya texted then, asking whether things had calmed after June's dinner at home. I sent that Jonas had pulled out therapy notes like courtroom props tonight. She answered 12 minutes later with only a small grey heart from work. Of course I called that agreement, because silence needed usefulness tonight from someone. Annika noticed my screen and looked away like pity had limits tonight too. Jonas put the tablet, notebook and charger into the lower drawer carefully tonight. He locked it slowly with a key from his desk cup there waiting. The click sounded small, but it rearranged the room around us completely anyway. I told myself he was being dramatic because drama made him smaller tonight. Raphael messaged then, asking whether the careful one had calmed down yet tonight. I stared at his name and saw rescue turning into liability there too. Things got messy because even Raphael sounded safer when he stayed distant now. Maya's grey heart sat above his message like a door, half closing slowly. Annika left with him minutes later, waiting in her car outside alone below. I watched from the window while rain erased their shapes together slowly below. Things got messy because the house finally sounded honest after they left together. The locked drawer stayed behind me, holding more patience than fear now tonight. Wednesday evening began with radiator clicks, wet shoes, and the locked drawer behind him. Things got messy because quiet evidence had started making louder demands than shouting ever. 2 cups, 3 unread messages, and 1 husband moved around me too carefully tonight. Jonas had not left for work, which made the house feel scheduled against me. Of course, I called that intimidation because concern had stopped working on him properly. Maya had gone quiet since Monday, answering with hearts instead of usable sentences now. Raphael sent 1 message asking whether my home situation had become risky again lately. Risky sounded businesslike, and businesslike made him smaller than desire had promised before. I asked what he meant, but the bubbles vanished before courage arrived there. Things got messy when I opened the group chat before dinner started downstairs. June, Theo, Maya, and Annika still sat there, pretending silence was kindness somehow. I wrote that Jonas had crossed lines by monitoring my tablet and messages. Then I added that his paranoia had become unsafe for our marriage now. 1 sentence, 2 edits, and 1 blue send button changed the room immediately. Of course, I told myself public honesty was safer than private distortion from him. June's name appeared beneath the message, then disappeared like someone closing curtains carefully. Theo did not respond, which made his silence sound more thoughtful than neutral. Annika answered indirectly that private pain should not become public cover for cruelty. I heard sisterly theatre, not warning, because warning required admitting I had chosen. Jonas came from the study holding nothing, which was worse than holding proof. The careful one asked whether the message made home feel safer for me tonight. I heard accusation, because accusation gave me walls to push against again. I said he had made the marriage feel like surveillance with better manners. That was the correct thing, clean enough to stand and cruel enough to stay. Jonas did not deny it, and that gave my anger 1 bright second. He said indirectly that a case file became necessary when truth was punished. The sentence entered softly, then took more space than my message had taken. Things got messy because my strongest word had become his clearest pattern now. I said he wanted everyone seeing me as careless, unstable, and cruel tonight. He asked for 1 clean sentence, not explanation, not performance, just truth once. The offer sounded small, but small doors can still reveal whole rooms. Of course I called it another interrogation, because truth had no safe costume. I told him Raphael was a friend, and even friendship needed privacy sometimes. Jonas looked toward the drawer, then back at me without pleading any more tonight. That absence of pleading made my voice louder than the house required then. I said he had used grief like permission to distrust ordinary love again. Annika replied from the hallway that grief was not the lie here tonight. I hated her for being present, because witnesses make exits harder to rewrite. June called then, and her name flashing felt like betrayal rehearsed elsewhere already. I ignored it, because ignored witnesses become easier than answered ones eventually there. Jonas said indirectly that he had all the evidence he needed now already. No threat, no raised voice, only that calm sentence arranging the furniture inside. Things got messy because I finally understood he had stopped chasing me already. He was not guessing, not spiraling, not building shadows from grief anymore either. He had been waiting for my last lie to choose its audience carefully. I reached for Raphael first because rescue still had his face then somehow. His answer came after 8 minutes, careful enough to sound professionally typed already. He said my situation was complicated and his work could not be involved. I asked whether we meant anything, but he answered with boundaries instead again. The word boundaries looked like a locked door wearing expensive shoes tonight there. Things got messy when Raphael asked me not to use his name anymore. I told Jonas Raphael was scared because Jonas had created a hostile situation. Jonas said indirectly that careful men recognize fire after using matches privately first. That sounded like truth, so I treated it like cruelty immediately instead again. I sent Maya a voice note from the downstairs bathroom after that conversation. 3 minutes, one listened icon, and no reply came back from her phone. Her absence did not accuse me, which made it harder to fight back. Of course I called her busy, because abandonment needed softer labels tonight badly. In the mirror, my face looked arranged by someone losing authority quickly inside. I washed my hands twice, though nothing visible had touched them yet tonight. When I returned, Jonas had put his phone face down beside the drawer again. The tablet was still locked inside, but it seemed louder than furniture there. He said communications would be practical now because conversation had become unsafe here. I heard punishment, not boundary, because boundaries always sound cruel from departing people. Things got messy when I tried one last version of myself aloud there. I said a wife deserves privacy without being treated like a suspect daily. He said indirectly that privacy had become the room where betrayal slept comfortably. Annika looked away, and that mercy felt worse than anger from her tonight. Jonas picked up the drawer key, not his coat or overnight bag tonight. That small choice told me leaving was not the action anymore now here. The action had happened quietly while I was still collecting defenses elsewhere. He said indirectly that he would handle things properly from this point forward. No documents, no names, no threat, just calm moving behind his eyes tonight. I laughed once because laughter still pretended I had chosen the temperature there. Nobody joined it, and that was the first real public answer tonight. Raphael's last message stayed on my screen, warning against drama and names both. Maya's silence sat above it, soft as cloth over furniture after departures. June's missed call blinked beneath both, patient enough to become evidence later too. Things got messy because every person I used for shelter had shifted away. The careful one walked toward the study, key held loose in hand there. He did not slam anything, which made the house sound finished already inside. I stood beside the bathroom light, still calling him paranoid inside myself quietly. The word had no teeth left, but my mouth kept reaching anyway. Behind the locked drawer, evidence waited more calmly than love ever had done. Friday morning, Claire Benton's conference room smelled like printer heat and stale coffee. 2 chairs, 3 folders, and 1 old tablet waited beside Jonas quietly there. Things got messy because formal rooms make emotional stories look badly dressed there. Of course, I arrived ready to explain his control as the real problem. Before I sat, Raphael's written statement was already inside Claire's folder there waiting. It said our relationship was mutual, private, and never worth damaging his career. 1 lover, 1 sentence, and 1 exit arrived before the meeting began properly. I told myself he was protecting work, not abandoning me publicly first again. Claire placed a document between us and turned the title toward me slowly. It read, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage with Temporary Financial Orders and Evidence Preservation Notice. My fingers reached for the paper, then stopped beside the tablet's cracked charger. Claire said the temporary orders hearing was scheduled for June 11, 2026. Jonas requested limited account access, home use, and preservation of synced evidence records. I said he had turned a marriage into an audit trail again himself. Claire asked why the evidence existed before my accusation became public online then. My version entered the room, looked around, and found no friendly surface anywhere. June sat beside Jonas, holding printed screenshots without looking proud or cruel there. She had saved the garden preview, the group message, and my edits afterward. The tablet held hotel thumbnails, message previews, and deleted calendar gaps restored cleanly. No new secret appeared. Only old choices had learned to stand together finally. Things got messy because evidence sounded calmer than every feeling I could name. I told Jonas he had made fear into procedure, which was true enough. He said indirectly that procedure became necessary when truth kept being punished first. Of course I called him cold, because cold sounded weaker than correct there. Jonas did not answer, and that silence removed my last easy target completely. He stood before Claire finished, asking that future communication go through counsel only. My husband left first, carrying nothing except the careful shape of escape outside. The chair across from me stayed pushed in, almost polite after him still. Maya was not outside, not texting, not waiting near the elevators either today. 5 changes followed, plain enough that even I stopped arranging them prettily inside. I moved into a furnished flat above Maya's salon, though she avoided stairs. Joint spending paused pending orders, and my purchases became items someone reviewed monthly. June stopped inviting me, Theo apologized to Jonas, and Annika blocked messages privately. Raphael sent one formal statement and refused every direct message afterward from me again. Vera removed me from incident leadership after screenshots moved privately through colleagues upstairs. Things got messy because consequences arrived without needing anyone to hate me openly. The old white tablet came back by courier with its charger wrapped around it. Of course I wanted to call that theatrical, but theatre needs audience somewhere. I believed calling Jonas paranoid would keep control of the story for me. It proved I knew exactly how close he was to truth already then. I called him paranoid until the evidence started answering for him instead of me.